Hello guys, Ark here, and in this video I'm gonna go over the next step into Worlds 2023, and that is the actual World Championship 2023 main event. Again, as you probably already know, this will be a Swiss stage format where there will be a maximum of 5 rounds, and teams will either be eliminated or advancing to the knockout stage if they get 3 losses or 3 wins respectively. Now, since the planes have concluded, we know the 16 teams that will be participating in the Swiss stage. It were the 14 teams that were already existing there in the first place. Then we added Gigabyte Marines and Team BDS who qualified for the playing stage. And now we have 4 pools of 4 teams each. In the first pool, we have Genji, JD Gaming, G2 Esports, and NRG. So, Korea's first, China's first, EU's first, and North America's first. Honestly, I'm still not sure why North America is getting first, gets the first pool here. Honestly, like it will be, in my opinion, much better if a region like PCS would be getting at least one team in here, and maybe even the region that won Worlds, in this case Korea, might be getting even 2 teams in Pool One. But that's a whole other topic for another discussion. But yeah, the main thing for me is like North America is getting so many seeds despite them doing basically nothing in being the laughing stock of every World Championship. But yeah, I digress. Whatever. Pool 2, we have the second seeds of all the major regions again, T1, BLG, Fnatic, and Cloud9. And in the third pool, we again have the third seeds of every major region, KT Roster, LNG, Mad Lions, and Team Liquid. So, yeah, this is a weird thing. Like, supposedly, like, Gen.G is on the same uh, power level, so to speak, with energy, for example. Like pool one teams are supposed to be like stronger than most of the pool two and pool three, but can anybody really, really say that energy is better than any of the pool two, apart from maybe Cloud9, or any of the pool three, apart from like TL and maybe Mad Lions? Even like pool four, I'm pretty sure that D Plus and Weibo just outright beat energy, and I wouldn't be surprised if even BDS beats Energy at this point, but yeah, whatever. And yeah, Pool 4 has D Plus and Weibo, fourth seeds from Korea and China, and the two playing teams, Gigabyte Marines and Team BDS. So we have concluded the draw for the first round of the Swiss stage. Again, if you do not know how the Swiss stage works, really quickly, um, teams play each other um, in best of ones, where one team wins, one team loses, and because of that, on the next round, round two, we will have 8 teams with an 1-0 record and another 8 teams with a 0-1 record. So the teams with the same record, so for example the 1-0, will be matched against each other. So we'll have 4 best of ones again between 1-0 teams, another 4 between 0-1 teams. Again, from the 1-0, we will have 4 teams who go to 2-0, right? And so on. And once a team reaches 3 victories, they advance to the knockout stage. If they reach 3 losses this way, um, they get eliminated from the World Championship. Um, It's important to note that every game is a best of one, but the games that would be deciding if a team gets to the third win or the third loss. So if you have any record of 2 and something, like 2 wins and any losses, or any wins and 2 losses, um, you will be playing a best of three, which I think is very nice. So we get to see best of ones, best of threes, and of course the knockout stage is all best of fives. I like this format. I think this benefits every team from all over the world, because I know that EU and NA have a lot of best of ones. Of course, they have like best of fives for their playoffs. I think they had some best of threes in Europe at least. Um, but LCK and LPL have only best of threes and best of fives. They have the regular season as best of threes and their knockouts or playoff stage as best of fives, and they have no best of ones. And it used to be like this dark cloud that best of ones can be very tricky for the Eastern teams, and this can be a way for like the Western teams to take them down because anything can happen in one game, like some cheese strategy, or the Eastern team just blunders something, the Western team snowballs off of it, and they get some weird victory and whatnot. Uh, but honestly, it doesn't really happen. Like you would think that the West will have an advantage in the best of one format, but through the entirety of the group stage of the previous World Championships, um, the good Eastern teams would be beating the Western teams even if best of ones regardless. So it doesn't really matter. But here now we have best of ones and best of threes in the Swiss stage, which makes the Eastern teams even stronger than before, in my opinion. Which honestly they didn't really need to be stronger, but they are. So whatever. And the gap keeps getting bigger every year, regardless. So I don't think the West has any chance. Anyway, so moving on to the draw. We first drew all the Pool 1 teams, and the Pool 1 teams would be matched against one of the Pool 4 teams. So, for example, Genji could be matched against BDS and JDG against D+. Of course, in the first round, we could not have matchups between teams from the same region. So, for example, we couldn't have Genji versus D+, or like JD versus Weibo. So what happened in the draw is Genji was matched against Gigabyte Marines, which I think is the weakest team out of the 16 here. In all honesty, I think that Genji would have no problem beating either of those teams here. Maybe Weibo could give them some sort of challenge. Maybe BDS could like tease out some strategy, but I think none of these teams will have any chances against Genji. So they still drew the weakest team, but in all respect to Gigabyte Marines, of course, every team that's here is good and has potential to do some damage, but I cannot see Genji dropping a game against any of those teams. And afterwards, we got JDG versus Team BDS, which for BDS, honestly, again, you couldn't go against G2 Esports, so unluckily for them, you would go against either Genji, JD Gaming, or NRG. So the chances of you getting matched against RNG were lower compared to either Genji or JD Gaming, so they were kind of screwed from the beginning. Um, they drew JD Gaming, which is supposed to be the strongest team coming into Worlds, so that's quite unlucky from their part. At the same time, for Gigabyte Marines, they drew Genji, but they could have easily gotten against NRG or G2 Esports. I cannot see G2 Esports losing against any of those lower tier teams. I think G2 is the only hope of the West. I think they do have a considerate chance of actually making it to the knockout stage, and I think they would beat any of those teams of Gam Esports and Mad Lions and like Team Liquid, LMG even. Um, but of course, G2 were matched up against D plus Kia, which is probably not probably, like definitely the most hype matchup from the first round. The history between G2 and D plus, I think it's one of the biggest rivalries in international events. We all remember G2 versus D plus in 2019, where um, G2 knocked out, or was it in 2020? I think. Oh yeah, no, it was G2 versus Damwon Gaming in 2019, where G2 knocked them out, and then in 2020, D Plus was matched against G2 again, all that in knockout stages, and D Plus actually won that series, and ended up winning the entire thing in the end. And we all know the rivalry between like Showmaker and Caps and Perks when he was in G2. It's all fun and games, but there's also like a healthy rivalry as well. So it's a good draw, G2 versus Damwon. I'm really curious to see how they match up. Technically, G2 and Damwon, I think that based on my predictions, um, I have Genji, JD Gaming, T1, BLG, KT, LNG, 6 teams so far. That would be advancing to the next stage, right? I think those 6 teams are a lock. So we have 2 more slots that I think will be played between G2, Weibo Gaming, and D Plus, right? And what that means is that the team that wins the game between the G2 and Damwon matchup is getting a big advantage in the race for those top 8 teams. Um, because you already get a win, you're closer to the 3 wins, right? So this is not just a huge matchup because of tradition and all that, but it's a huge matchup for the standings. Like you can see other games like Gen Z versus Gigabyte Marines. Like Gen Z can drop a game here if they want to, and they're probably still gonna make it, like most likely. But the G2 versus Damwon is a huge matchup in my opinion, probably the most important for the standings and the most hype in terms of like history, etc. So and the last matchup was Energy versus Weibo Gaming. Um, Honestly, I think Energy, like, I'm not sure if NA would have any easy matchup. I mean, I think Energy would probably lose against BDS. They would probably lose against Weibo Gaming or D Plus. Maybe if they drew Gigabyte Marines, maybe they would have a chance, but I do not see Energy doing anything important, and I think Weibo will take this one. And now from Pool 2, we got a T1 versus Team Liquid. Not the biggest rivalry in terms of like teams or in terms of players, but I think out of all the Pool 2 teams, obviously T1 and BLG are the strongest ones. Again, TL could not be matched against Cloud9, so they had the lower chance of getting Fnatic or the bigger chance of getting either T1 or BLG. So all of NA teams and same for Mad Lions or EU teams were kind of screwed from the beginning, right? But regardless, we got T1 versus TL, and then we got a hype matchup between C9 and Mad Lions. And then we also got KT versus BLG, which is also a huge matchup. And of course, the last one, the last matchup for round one would be Fnatic versus LNG Esports. So there is a lot to unpack here. And of course, the first 4 matchups between Pool 1 and Pool 4 will be quite easy to predict. I mean, not quite easy to predict because it's G2 versus D Plus and NRG versus Weibo. I think those two are going to be close. But like obviously, Gen Z is probably going to win over Gigabyte Marines. JD Gaming is probably going to beat BDS. Um, but the Pool 2 versus Pool 3 games are like so spicy. Like apart from the T1 versus TL, which is like probably T1's going to take it. We have BLG versus KT, where supposedly BLG is the favorite over the KT, but it's best of ones. It's KT. You never know what's gonna happen. BLG's momentum is kinda slowed down, so to speak, because they lost in the semifinals in the LPL, and of course, new patch and all that. You never know what's gonna happen. So I think KT versus BLG. BLG is a slight favorite, but honestly, I can see the matchup going either way. And then we have, of course, the EU versus NA. We could not uh, have a draw without one of those. Mad Lions versus Cloud9. Again, you would think that maybe Mad Lions is not as strong this year, Maybe Cloud9 is fine. So maybe Cloud9 is the is having the upper hand. But you know what happens when there's like EU versus NA, and people say, "Oh, NA, this team is gonna be good this year," and oh, they're the favorite, and you know what happens? You know, BDS 3-0 Golden Guardian. So um, if I had to bet, I would say that Mad Lions beats Cloud9. Of course, the Fnatic versus LNG is. I think LNG is gonna take it. LNG showed a lot of strength in the LPL finals, and I think Fnatic is. It's one of those teams that they can still deal some damage. Like if you're not 100%, if LNG is not 100%, then Fnatic can like maybe score an upset. Um, but regardless, I think all of these games are either super 50-50 or uh, they have good history behind them. Me as a Gen G fan, I'm happy and sad with the draw of Gigabyte Marines because I would like to see something more competitive. But now that I think more about it, we will for sure see some more competitive matches in like round two or round three, right? Because you will be playing against teams that have won if we assume that Zenji wins as well, right? Um, and this means that we will get competitive matches regardless, even before the knockout stage. So I think as a Genji fan, again, I'm happy with the draw. I guess it feels like a free win. I don't like no disrespect to Gigabyte Marines, but I think they have almost no chance of beating Genji. So with that said, let's go over to the pick'ems and try to do the. Oh, they do not have a. They don't have winnings and who's gonna win the thing, right? Oh, well, it's unfortunate. So let's just do this really quickly. I think Gingy is gonna qualify T1, KT, JD, BLG, LNG. I think these six teams feel like a lock. And then I'm gonna say that traditionally LPL doesn't get all of its teams out. So like out of the four teams sent, like only three make it out. So I will leave Weibo Gaming out and pick G2 and D plus. What happens if I press continue? Okay, whatever. Choose one. Choose one team to go undefeated. Uh, hmm. This is hard to predict. I will do this in just a bit. First, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna predict the winners, right? Um, let's zoom in a bit. Well, before I predict the winners, I just wanna quickly say that on Thursday, is Thursday the 19th is when the Swiss stage will begin, and of course we will begin with T1 versus Team Liquid. So um, it's a T1 game. People get excited for T1. T1 has the most fans in the world, so it's smart to have T1 play first to create the excitement. And of course, it's also nice to have it be followed by the NA versus EU matchup between C9 and Mad Lions. Create hype, and then you get the Gen G versus Gigabyte Marines. Um, I'm pretty sure this game is is the one that people will be interested the least because Gen Z still have fans, but it's a game that is probably the most one-sided here in the first round, and I think a lot of people will try to use this game as like bathroom break or make something to eat, whatever, right? Which is sad. Again, as a Gen Z fan, I find it quite sad that that's gonna happen, but it will happen. And then again, we have kind of the same thing with JDG versus BDS. slightly more competitive than the previous one, but I think again it's kind of smart to put those games after the first two, who are going to be kind of like hype and create the most interest, to give the fans time to like steam off and cool down a bit, and then we're gonna follow this with a in the right in the middle with G2 versus Damwon. I think again this is like the most hype matchup in round one, and probably the most important in terms of standings. So this is gonna be like the highlight of the day, at least in my opinion, and in what I think. And then we'll have Energy versus Weibo Gaming. A matchup that could go either way. Honestly, I think Weibo is the favorites, but you never know. Then Fnatic versus LNG. I think LNG will take this. I'd say it's like 80-20 chance or so. And then, of course, we close out the day strong with BLG versus KT, LPL versus LCK, um, the biggest rivalry in the world of League of Legends, of course. Um, and of course, the round to draw will probably take place after all the games here are concluded. So I think T1, Mad Lions, Genji, JDG, um, Weibo, LNG, and BLG will win. And the only one that I'm not sure is G2 versus Damwon. Uh, Man, this is so hard to predict because on paper, G2 should be the favorites here, which as an LCK fan does not feel really nice, but it's Damwon at Worlds. Damwon at Worlds always shows up, even when they were told that, you know what, oh, Damwon is not that good anymore. Oh, like last year it was against JDG in groups, I think, right? Where is it? Um, so yeah, you see, Damwon Kia last year, who was supposed to be like weak coming from the LCK, they went up against JDG in a group against JDG, G2 Esports, which was another time they faced up, and I completely forgot about it, and against Evil Geniuses, right? And they ended up third first place with JDG. They beat JDG once, right? Like Damwon always shows up at Worlds. So if even though on paper G2 should be looking stronger than D plus, I can easily see D plus taking the game out of G2. But I think it's like the super most 50-50 game you would probably ever see. I'm gonna go with Damwon though. I'm gonna go with Damwon. So I'm gonna go with again T1, Mad Lions, NG, JDG, D plus, Weibo, LNG, and BLG. So all of the LPL teams to win. KT will lose, but all the other three LCK teams will win, and the Mad Lions will win over C9 as well. So after that, let's assume that those are the winners. What pairings do I want to see in round two? In round two, of course, there will be no limitations. Like for example, like the regional thing or the pool seeding team thing. Um, I I'm not sure if I want to see regional face-ups because it's still like too soon. I'd rather see like a regional in like the best of three qualifying match, for example. Um, and I'm not sure if I want to see the Genji versus JDG matchup yet. Um, Maybe a best of one rematch between Genji and BLG would be fun. A rematch from their MSI clash where BLG won 3-0. Maybe um, Mad Lions versus um, hmm. Wait, if if it's let's say Gen G versus BLG, right? Then who is J? Oh, maybe JDG versus T1 could be a good matchup because it's a rematch from last year semifinals, right? But also JDG versus D Plus would also be a fun matchup because it's a rematch from the group stage last year. And I think D Plus and JDG were in the same group in 2020 as well, right? Um, so those two teams are commonly facing against each other against each other in best of ones, right? So Gen G versus BLG will be a fun matchup. Then JDG versus either T1 or DK will also be a fun matchup. Um, no, LNG versus I don't know Damwon will be fun. But the losers will be more spicy in my opinion because the winners are the teams that are generally the favorites to advance anyway, right? What's really important is which teams from the losers actually pick up some victories in round two and kind of move away from getting eliminated just a little bit, or actually move closer to being promoted, right? So if we say that Energy and Fnatic and KT, G2, BDS, GAM, C9, and TL, all of them lose, then we have a lot of EU versus EU or EU versus NA potential, right? And I think that is a good spot for those lower tier teams to actually rack up some victories, right? Because let's just say that we get an Fnatic versus Energy in round two, and then we get C9 versus G2, for example, right? Or maybe C9 versus TL, and Fnatic beats Energy, for example, and C9 beats TL, and those teams with a record of 1-1 will move to round three, and they can potentially face each other if the luck of the draw is there. So Fnatic could end up facing C9 in round three, which is also a historic matchup as well. And the winner of that would suddenly be having a record of 2-1, which is actually kind of insane to think about, right? Like teams that you think have no chance of advancing, with a bit of luck of the draw, they by round three they could be having a 2-1 uh, scored line, right? And then every other match that they will play will be a best of three. They will play one in round four and one in round five potentially. So they have two opportunities in two best of threes to advance if they win either of those. And again, if the luck of the draw is good for them, they can advance. And at the same time, it can be bad luck for teams like, I don't know, if Damwon wins, right? Over G2, and Damwon gets matched against like JDG, who I assume JDG will beat Damwon. They'll go down to 1-1. And if you get a strong pairing like Genji versus T1, Genji wins, then T1 also has a record of 1-1 afterwards, and T1 gets matched up against Damwon Kia, who's also 1-1. Either of those teams will go on round three. They will face up and will go to round four with a record of 1-2. So they will play best of threes to avoid elimination, despite being favorites in the beginning, because the draw was not favorable to them. Of course, in the end, if the team is strong, they will be advancing to the knockout stage regardless. But I'm just pointing out how exciting the Swiss stage actually is, and how much the group how much different it is from the group stage, and how much the draw uh, can actually affect and favor teams that are of lower strength, and disfavor um, the stronger ones, and it will be interesting to see how this develops, right? Regardless, I think choose one team to go undefeated. Um, so of course, there will be two teams who will be undefeated, right? Because here they all start on 0-0. Then 8 teams will have a record of 1-0. Then four of those 8 teams will go to 2-0, and two of those teams will go to 3-0, right? Undefeated means that undefeated in terms of like series, right? So if you play the best of three and you win it 2-1, I think it still counts as undefeated, right? Um, hmm. I think GNG or JDG are the most obvious choices, considering they have the easiest round one draw as well. Like you expect them to almost 100% win their first matchup. Whereas, maybe like um, BLG can fumble against KT, for example. G2 versus Down wins a 50-50, right? Um, of course, yeah, we do not know the draw of round two and on, but I'm just gonna believe in Genji here. Okay, there's nothing else here, right? Okay, so no more pick'ems. So yeah, just to recap again, on Thursday the 19th, the squish stage will begin. We have these 8 matchups here. I made my predictions: T1, Mad Lions, Genji, JDG, Damwon, uh, Weibo Gaming, LNG, and BLG. I think all those teams will win. And a very spicy day. I really enjoy this format. The only way it could be made better if all of them were like best of threes instead. But of course, that will take so much more time to finish up. But I enjoy the best of three format much more than the best of one. Um, so yeah, these are my predictions. I'm super excited, and I hope you are as well. Um, Please consider subscribing. It will really help me out to grow this channel. I think I can offer a lot more content, more informative, and me talking about my opinions and thoughts and sharing them with you. So yeah, I will see what happens on Thursday, and I will probably produce another video on Thursday with a recap of day one and expectations for the next day on round two. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.